Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Mom Street USA. I am your host, Jackie, and on today's episode, we are talking all things thrill. So we've been doing a little series lately about different themed days or different character-based days. We did a Star Wars one, we did Mickey, we did princesses. Well, now we're going to take a little bit of a different approach to that, in that we are going to talk about the perfect thrill day at Disney World. Now, have no fear. If you're not a thrill person, come back next week because next week we're going to be talking about the slower rides and dark rides. So stay tuned for that if that's more your jam. But today we're talking about all things thrill. So when people think about Disney World, they don't always think about the thrill rides, right? Usually their mind goes to smaller kid rides or family rides, but there are plenty of ride options for the thrill seekers in your groups when you're visiting the Walt Disney World parks. So today we're going to talk through all 4 Disney parks, and we'll chat about what rides are the best for those that like to go fast. And then after we get through all of the options, at the end, I will give you my suggestion for if you want the ultimate thrill day, you want to do all 4 parks, you want to hit all the thrill rides. I'm going to give you my best suggestion for the approach to that. So let's start at Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom has 3 different thrill rides that we're going to talk about. Now, before we jump into this list, I should mention that most of these are categorized as thrill rides through Disney. So if you look them up on My Disney Experience on your app or on the website, then you're going to find that they are listed as thrill rides. A couple of these you may think are questionable, and that's okay. But what I did was I looked through that category, found what they considered to be a thrill ride, and then made some notes for you all. So hopping to Animal Kingdom, we are going to start with my favorite ride at Animal Kingdom, and that is Flight of Passage. So Flight of Passage is a flight simulator style ride. You sit in a seat that is like a motorcycle, so it feels like you are riding on the back of a banshee from the Avatar movies. It is an amazing immersive experience. It is a 4D experience that you have that you can go to at Animal Kingdom. It is a very, very popular attraction. It has a height restriction of 44 inches, so you've got to be 44 inches or above to be able to ride, but it is one that I never skip when I go to Animal Kingdom. It is one of my absolute favorite rides, just for the theming, the storytelling, the entire experience is just top notch. The next thrill ride at Animal Kingdom is Expedition Everest. This is a true roller coaster thrill ride. You take a ride through the Forbidden Mountain. You meet some characters along the way. And don't think Disney characters. I shouldn't say characters. I should say you meet some of the local legend wildlife along the way. And there's a little surprise twist that I don't want to ruin. I mean, I don't know if you consider it a spoiler, considering this ride opened over 20 years ago. But super, super fun coaster. Definitely a true roller coaster. It also has a 44-inch height requirement. This one is super fun. It's really, really great. This is a really good one if you've got an older group that can handle a single rider line. The single rider line at this ride is very, very good. So keep that in mind if you're going and maybe it's, a 45-50 minute wait. You don't want to wait that long. Check out the single rider line, see how quickly it's moving, because it is typically a really good option for riding Everest. The other thrill ride that I would maybe potentially put in this category is Cali River Rapids. So this is a water raft ride. It's one of those circular rafts that you ride with, 7 other people, and you will get drenched on this ride. So it's a very quick moving ride through the rapids, which is why it's considered a thrill ride, and not just like a water ride that you would go on. But it's got a really nice scenic view as you float and whisk your way through the surroundings. It comes close to some of the animal enclosures. Unfortunately, when they made this ride, they intended for it to go through tiger enclosures and stuff, but things changed, plans changed. So the theming isn't as great as it could be because of that. But overall, a really, really nice water ride. I'll be honest, I've never been on it. I've seen a lot of videos on it, but I am not a water ride person. I don't enjoy getting wet. And this is one that you will absolutely 100% get wet on. So bring a change of clothes, think about the clothes that you're going to wear. They do have lockers right outside of the entrance to Cali River that you can utilize for stashing clothes and other things in if you don't want to take them on the ride with you, or if you want to have a change of clothes with a sealable wet bag for like your kiddos, if you want to have them put on swimsuits, just make sure they're fully covered whenever you go to get on the ride. If you've got your little guy that wants to wear his swim trunks, make sure he's got a shirt that goes with him, all those good theme park rules for getting on water rides. But that is Cali River Rapids. It does have a 38-inch height requirement because it is such a swiftly moving water raft ride. So those are your 3 thrill rides at Animal Kingdom with a brief description of what they are. Let's hop now over to Epcot to talk about the thrill rides over there. So over at Epcot, we've got 3 thrill rides as well. The first one I think is the one that everybody thinks of when they think of thrill rides at Epcot, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. This is a really unique coaster experience. It is a true roller coaster, but it has a very unique ride system in that there are several cars within your train, your coaster train, but each car actually rotates and spins individually and independently from the others. So every seat that you sit in on this coaster, you get a completely different experience with, which is super fun. It has a very unique launch system as well. Again, I don't know if these are spoilers. This ride has been open for several years, but I won't go into too much detail just in case you like to be surprised. But it has a very unique launch system, super great theming and storytelling with this one. It is one of the top thrill rides in all of Walt Disney World that people will come to ride. I love it. I think it's so much fun, but it is definitely intense and very thrilling. Now, it's very smooth, it's a very enjoyable experience. But I do know several people that maybe have some motion sensitivity that do not do well on this because it does also have several screen-based elements to it, as well as that kind of rotation that happens within your car. So keep those things in mind if you've got somebody in your group that maybe is sensitive to motion. It does have a 42-inch height requirement, which is a little low for a coaster. It does not go upside down in any way, so that's part of the reason why it's such a low height requirement, but it is fairly intense for having a 42-inch height requirement. When my youngest was just at 42 inches, she begged to ride it and she loved it, but her eyes were closed the entire time. So it's a little bit harder to judge maybe if this is your first ride, coaster, thrill ride experience for your 42-inch kiddo. There may be some other better options on this list that I'm going to talk about, maybe some of the Magic Kingdom options, or even some of the ones at Hollywood Studios with Slinky Dog. But 42 inches is the height requirement for Guardians of the Galaxy. Overall, an amazingly wonderful, super fun themed coaster ride over there. The other 2 thrill rides over at Epcot are very different than your standard coaster thrill ride. So the next one we're going to talk about is Mission Space. So Mission Space is one of the older rides at Epcot, and a lot of people, I'll be honest with you, refuse to ride it. But the reason that they do is because there are 2 different options for Mission Space. There is a green option, there is an orange option. Your green option is much more gentle, much more family friendly. Your orange option is very, very intense. So a lot of people experience maybe some unpleasant feelings after the orange side, but the green side is much more family friendly. The whole theme of the ride is help complete a mission to space by doing your part. So you have a job that you have to do on this attraction. You're either a navigator, a pilot, a commander, or an engineer. So your job is to help to pilot and staff this mission to space. It is a simulator ride in that you sit down and the screen kind of closes you in, if that makes sense. It can be claustrophobic. So if you are not somebody that enjoys tight spaces, that's something to consider. But it is all screen simulated. The attraction itself does also move, but it's more of that kind of motion simulator style of attraction. People do get sick on this ride, so proceed with caution if you're somebody that wants to do it, and maybe start with green before jumping 2 feet into the orange side just to get an idea of what it's like. This is sponsored by NASA, so you know that they did a whole lot of true astronaut research before they completed the ride. So keep that in mind. The last thrill ride over at Epcot is Test Track. Now, this one people would say is maybe a little bit questionable. I consider it a thrill ride. It's also part dark ride too, uh, but the speed at which you go through the attraction says thrill ride to me. So, in this attraction, you're going to take a ride through different new technologies in futuristic car design and different experiences with those cars. And you end it with a thrilling joy ride outside at the end. So, a super fun experience. This is a new version of this attraction that did just reopen this past summer, but it is a super, super fun experience. Oh gosh, it's been almost a year since it's been open, which is crazy. Time flies. I really like this newest version of Test Track that they reopened. A lot of people are a little bummed about the fact that you no longer get to design your car before you go on, but I really like what they did with the storytelling elements. I think it really pulled it together. It makes it so I want to ride it, which I think I only did the last version of Test Track maybe one time, and I said, that's enough. And I didn't ride it again for several, several years. So I think this one is one that was a really, really nice plussing and upgrade that they did for Test Track. Test Track does have a 40-inch height requirement. And I don't know if I mentioned Mission Space before. This has a 40-inch height requirement as well. So both of those are at 40 inches, a lower height requirement because they're not true coaster style thrill rides. They are very different. Mission Space, again, be very, very cautious. Test Track is super accessible to anybody that is 40 inches and above. There are parts of it that are in the dark. So that would be the only caution that I would have for allowing your kiddos to go on Test Track. If you've got kiddos that do not do dark well, they may or may not want to do Test Track. But overall, a really, really great thrill ride, one that I really like over at Epcot. So that takes care of our first two parks. Let's now jump on the Skyliner and head over to Hollywood Studios. So over at Studios, we have 5 different thrill rides to talk about. And that number alone is why I always suggest to people that are visiting the Disney parks, if you want a lot of thrills, a lot of bigger attractions, attractions that are good for like your preteens and teens, Hollywood Studios is really the park to go to. They've got the most thrill rides, what I would consider to be like bigger kid, grown up, teenager thrill rides. Now, Magic Kingdom does have a lot too, but they're a little bit different there, and we'll get to that here just shortly. But over at Hollywood Studios, we've got 5 different thrill rides to talk about. Some of them are very traditional standard thrill rides. Some of them are a little bit more Disney-fied, if you will. But we are going to start with the newest, again, and I should put newest in quotes, but the newest reimagined thrill ride over here at Hollywood Studios, and that is Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets. So this is new and updated, featuring the Muppets. It just opened this week as I'm recording this, but May 26th, it just opened. It is a true coaster. It is an completely indoor coaster. It's got several inversions. I think it's got 2 loops and a couple corkscrews. So definitely one of the most intense coasters that we've got at Walt Disney World. Like I said, it is completely indoors. They use a lot of like black light and neon lighting for effect because it is so dark in there, which is super fun, but it can be a little disorienting. They've got a bunch of new Muppet touches to this attraction, not only in the queue, but also on the ride. Now, the ride itself, if you are someone that's familiar with the old version of Rock and Roller Coaster that was Aerosmith as the feature, the track has remained the same. So the ride itself is identical. The theming around the ride is what has changed. So you will see more Muppet touches to some of the flats, the different stand-ups and the signs and things that you pass as you ride through the ride. It also has a brand new Muppet soundtrack. And this soundtrack list, I think, is worth mentioning because it's super fun. It does rotate through 5 different songs. So I didn't talk about that with Cosmic Rewind, but Cosmic Rewind does the same thing, which I believe is fairly common knowledge by now since it's been open for long enough. But with Rock and Roller Coaster, there are 5 new songs that they have, and they rotate through, giving a little bit of a different feel to your ride. I don't know that these songs necessarily affect the ride as much as the ones on Cosmic Rewind have, from what I've been told. I have not ridden the new version of Rock and Roller Coaster yet, but I am hoping to in the coming months. So I will report back once that happens. But the new soundtrack includes 5 different songs. They are Song 2, which is a cover done by the Electric Mayhem. All of these are by the Electric Mayhem. I should preface by saying that. So Song 2, covered by the Electric Mayhem. Born to be Wild, which is covered by the Electric Mayhem featuring Camilla the Chicken. If you're familiar with the Muppets, you know who Camilla is. Love Roller Coaster, which is covered by the Electric Mayhem featuring Jennifer Hudson and Questlove. Rock Rock Till You Drop, which is Electric Mayhem featuring Def Leppard. And Walking on Sunshine, which is the Electric Mayhem featuring Kelly Clarkson. So tons of really great options there. I should also mention that Rock and Roller Coaster has a 48-inch height requirement. The restraints on this one are over the shoulder because it does go upside down, but 48 inches is the magic height for that one. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that before you get your kids hyped up to go on the new roller coaster starring the Muppets. This one is going to have a very long line for a very long time, I have a feeling. So we'll talk here at the end about my best suggestion for getting through all of these rides in one day and what I think you should do. So we'll tackle that here in a little bit. But that is your kind of overview of Rock and Roller Coaster. Directly next to Rock and Roller Coaster at the end of Sunset Boulevard at Hollywood Studios is the Tower of Terror, which is our next thrill ride that we are going to talk about. So Tower of Terror is a traditional drop tower. This one is fairly familiar, I think, to anybody who knows anything about the Disney rides. It seemed like the Twilight Zone show where you're going to enter the elevator and you become transported into the 5th dimension. So it's a little spooky. It is in the dark, and you kind of venture out into the elevator shaft, and it's you get one of several series of drops and lifts that they have. So different sequences for that ride. Sometimes you go up first, sometimes you go down first. You kind of never really know. But it is a true drop tower. The way that your body will experience that is through that feeling in the pit of your stomach that you may love or you may not. My kiddos have ridden this one and they have said that they are good and they don't need to ride it again. They don't love that feeling in the pit of your stomach. Although my oldest does like it on coasters, as he likes the little bunny hills, but he doesn't like it on tower. So, to each their own. But it is a 40-inch height requirement for Tower of Terror. And that is, again, one that you need to kind of know your kiddo because it can be a little spooky in the dark. A lot of the drops and lifts do happen in the dark. There is that elevator door at the top of the tower that will open to let the light in, but for the majority of the ride, you are in the dark with that one. The next thrill ride over at Hollywood Studios is Slinky Dog Dash. This is one of my favorite rides over at Hollywood Studios. It is a super family-friendly coaster. The theming is amazing. It is one of the iconic staples of Toy Story Land. When you walk into that land, you are greeted by the sights and sounds of the Slinky Dog Dash roller coaster. It's so super fun. It is a great first coaster for kids. So I talked earlier about Cosmic Rewind having kind of a lower height requirement at 42, and it maybe not being a great first coaster for your kiddo. Slinky Dog is an absolutely fantastic option for your kiddo's first roller coaster. It is a super fun theme. You are on Slinky Dog. You ride through all of the different building blocks and characters from Toy Story. It's so much fun. And it is only a 38-inch height requirement. So lower than Cosmic Rewind. It is definitely a really good option for your kiddo if they are unsure about coasters, but maybe want to give it a shot. This one is super, super fun. It's not very intense. Obviously, it doesn't go upside down, but it's just so fun themed. It's got a second launch halfway through the ride, and it does go up pretty high, but overall, it's not super intense. It is a super great family-friendly thrill ride that you can do over at Hollywood Studios. The next two and the last two on our list from Hollywood Studios that we are going to talk about are in the Star Wars area, Rise of the Resistance and Smuggler's Run. So these ones are a little bit maybe questionable as to whether or not people would consider them thrill rides. Disney does consider them thrill rides. I also would consider them thrill rides as well. But let's talk about Rise of the Resistance first. Rise of the Resistance is a truly immersive experience. It's got several pre-shows that walk you through the storyline. But basically, you're going to join the Resistance, and you, through a series of events, end up in an escape mission trying to get away from the First Order. This is an amazing theme, a super great storyline. Even if your kiddos don't know a ton about Star Wars, this is still a very accessible attraction for them to go on. You may have to prep them a little bit because the cast members that work this attraction are fully in character. So you may have to just remind them of that if they are someone that gets spooked or intimidated easily by the quote unquote bad guys, which would be the First Order in this attraction. But it's got amazing theming, amazing storyline, a super fun ride experience. Like I said, you go through several pre-shows before you actually board your ride vehicle. So don't be discouraged if you are going room by room and you're like, where's the ride? Have some patience, you'll get there. And the other great thing about Rise of the Resistance is if you've got a family or a group that can handle a single rider line and you've already been through once, let me really stress that. You want to go through the entire ride experience once at least before you do the single rider line, because the single rider line skips a lot of the storytelling elements at the beginning. So if you've already ridden through once, maybe you did standby, you used a lightning lane, however you're going to ride it, and if you want to be able to experience the ride portion again, jump in that single rider line because it's a really good one for the most part also. Now, if that single rider line is like out the door and around the corner, different story, because it is a fairly popular attraction. It does get a long standby, and more people are starting to know about that single rider line because it is a newer single rider line. It's been around maybe a little over a year, but it wasn't one that like originally opened when the attraction opened. So keep that in mind. But it is a really good option if you've already ridden it once and already have experienced all the storytelling elements for that. Rise of the Resistance has a 40-inch height requirement just because of some of the ride elements once you actually get on the ride. Again, no spoilers. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, even though this ride has been out for several years. But some of the elements are a little more intense once you get on the ride. So it does have a 40-inch height requirement because of that. The other Star Wars ride that we will talk about now is the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. So this attraction is another one of those more screen-based kind of motion simulator attraction. It just recently, this past week, got a overhaul to the storyline. Now you are going to, when you board on the Millennium Falcon, because that is what you drive and ride in for this mission aboard the Smuggler's Run ride, you are going to join the Mandalorian and Grogu. It just got this newly enhanced mission that you can go on. So you will jump in the Millennium Falcon and you will serve as either pilot, gunner, or engineer. There are 6 people to your car, so 2 pilots, 2 gunners, and 2 engineers, and you are going to help track down elusive ex-Imperial officers throughout the galaxy. So that is the newest mission that just came to Smuggler's Run this past week, in honor of the newest movie that just came out in theaters, just about a week ago from when I'm recording this. But a super, super fun experience. This is one that people also have mentioned they will sometimes get a little motion wonky with because it is fully screen-based. So again, keep that in mind. I did it last summer with my family. I didn't feel super great after it. I don't usually get motion sickness, but the screens in there didn't agree with my head that day. So I had a little bit of a headache after I rode that one. But it is a super fun one. The kids get to push all the buttons or drive the Millennium Falcon. So if you've got Star Wars kiddos, which my oldest is a Star Wars kiddo, he loved it. He got to be the pilot in our group because we had a group of 6 that went on it. So it was like perfect, the perfect number. then he got to drive the Millennium Falcon, and he talked about it the rest of the night. So if you've got a Star Wars kiddo, definitely don't miss this one. The height on this one is 38 inches, so very, very approachable for younger kiddos that are 38 inches. And again, it's fairly foolproof in that no matter what position in that attraction you're sitting in, the buttons light up for you to push, so you know exactly what to do. But super, super fun, and you can get to go on a mission with Mandalorian and Grogu, which is even better. So that is Smuggler's Run at Hollywood Studios. So that is our list of 5 attractions that are considered thrill rides over at Hollywood Studios. We are going to end our chat about thrill rides now by talking about Magic Kingdom. So Magic Kingdom they have 5 official thrill rides, but I put a 6th in there because here on Mom Street, we focus a lot on kids. And one of these is more kiddo thrill, but maybe not older audience thrill, if that makes sense. And you'll understand why here in a moment. But let's talk about these 6 thrill rides that are over at Magic Kingdom. We're going to start off with the newest. Again, I should put quote unquote newest in quotes like I did earlier when we were talking about Rock and Roller Coaster. But let's talk about Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So this ride just reopened in the last couple weeks here over at Magic Kingdom. It got a whole new track. It got new trains, like new coaster trains. It got a little bit of a story shift with some new things on it as well. But this is one of my favorite coasters at Disney. It's so much fun. It is a great long coaster ride. It usually doesn't have too long of a wait, even with it being newly refurbished and newly reopened. The waits haven't been terrible for it. But it is super, super fun. The whole theme of this one, you ride your runaway train through a mine shaft with amazing scenery. This is a super fun one to catch the fireworks from. If you are not a hub fireworks person and you don't care to watch Happily Ever After from the front of the castle, Big Thunder Mountain is a really, really great way if you can time it right to see the fireworks from, which is super, super fun. When it reopened just a few weeks ago, it did have a lower height requirement. Now, there's speculation online whether or not they slowed the ride down with the new track or that the new track caused the ride to run slower. Disney hasn't officially said. Who knows? A lot of people have reported it feeling slower than before, but it is a 38-inch height requirement. So that height requirement did drop from when it was open before. I believe it was 40 before, but now it is a 38 height inch requirement. Super, super fun attraction. Definitely a great one for kiddos that love coasters. I will mention this one is a little bit more intense than like a Slinky Dog. So keep that in mind if you're kind of comparing across property. Slinky Dog is a little smoother than this one. So do with that what you will. The next coaster that we are going to talk about is one that Disney doesn't technically list as a thrill ride, but I included it on this because I think it definitely can be, and that is the Barnstormer. So again, I talked about that here at Mom Street, we talk about the kiddos, we talk about the families. Barnstormer is truly the perfect first coaster for littles who are wanting to start to get into thrill rides. It is the shortest ride at Magic Kingdom, and it is all themed to Goofy and like the circus, so like different circus acts. It is found in the Storybook Circus area of Magic Kingdom, so it makes sense that that's the theming. But the reason that it is so perfect for littles that are first trying coasters it is a 35-inch height requirement. So very low height requirement, very accessible to any little one that maybe wants to give it a try. It is very short. It has just one lift hill at the beginning, but it's still very thrilling for kids of all ages. My niece, who went with us last summer, was 5 at the time. Absolutely loved this ride. My kids like this ride. My oldest is phased out a little bit more because he's more into the bigger coasters, but my youngest still loves this ride, and asks to go on it by name. So I would consider it a thrill ride for littles. It's not super comfy for bigger people to go on. And by bigger people, I literally just mean adults, not even just size or height wise. My husband, who is 6'2" doesn't ride this because it's too small for his knees. So, I have to take the kids on it anytime we wanna go on it, but, it's super fun, super short, very accessible to littles that are wanting to kind of dip their toe into thrill rides and are maybe unsure if they're gonna like them or not. Now, that being said, if you've got a kiddo that really likes Barnstormer, the next ride that I'm gonna talk about would be the next step that I would take at Magic Kingdom, and that is Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is another coaster that you have at Magic Kingdom. It is super smooth. It is a really, really nice family accessible coaster at Magic Kingdom. It is all themed to obviously Seven Dwarfs, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It is themed around the dwarves' mine that you see in the movie during the high ho scene where they're mining for the gems and the gold in that part of the movie. So the theming of this does include a trip to visit the seven dwarves at work in the mine, where you will hear the famous high ho song being sung as they are mining and finishing up their workday. So super, super fun, very accessible, very cute ride. Definitely one that I would consider. The height requirement on this one is 38 inches. So a little bit more than Barnstormer, but still, I think, very accessible to any little. And the seats in this one I really like for littles because they are individual lap restraints. So, and the seats are a little more like curved around your body. So they feel a little bit more secure, I think, in this one. But definitely a super fun attraction to consider for your little coaster lovers and also big coaster lovers as well. Okay, the next ride we're going to talk about is something a little different. And then we're going to go back to coasters for the last two because you'd be surprised. Again, I talked about this at the beginning. You don't necessarily think about roller coasters and thrill rides when you think about Disney, but Magic Kingdom alone has 5 coasters. So, but the next one we're going to talk about is not a coaster, but I would still consider it a thrill ride. And that is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And I would consider this a thrill ride because it's got that massive drop towards the end of the ride. So this is a log flume style water ride. Front rows on this one will get more wet than back rows, but you're still likely to get wet no matter what seat you sit in. The very back, you may get lucky and not get more than a couple splashes, but it depends on who's in your car and the weight distribution and all that science stuff. The storyline for this one follows Tiana and Lewis, and they are trying to find a band to play at a special event at Tiana's restaurant. So you go through the bayou looking for band members to come and play at this event. Super fun. Mama Odie's in it. There's some magic that maybe happens about halfway through the ride, and then you do end up going down the iconic big drop at the end. So this one I consider a thrill ride because of that. It is a 40-inch height requirement. This is one that if you've got a kiddo that doesn't like getting wet, you're going to have to make a decision on whether or not you want to attempt to take them. Because like I said, you may get wet, you may not get wet. It just really depends on the ride that you take and what seats you're sitting in. You can ask the cast members that are running the ride to wait for the back. You may have to wait another turn or two depending on what the load situation is going on at the moment, but it is something to consider when you're going on that one. I really like Tiana's. It does have some flaws to some of the animatronics, unfortunately. I think it was something that Disney wanted to really get out as quick as they could and finish it and get it ready to go because a lot of people were missing that attraction being open when they changed it from being Splash Mountain previously to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, now and going forward. Even with those little quirks with the animatronics, I still really like Tiana's. I think it's a great ride. I don't love water rides. I will go on Tiana's if I am asked to go on it, but it's not one that I personally choose because I don't love getting wet in the theme parks. So take that into consideration when you're deciding whether or not you want to consider Tiana's on your trip. The next two that we're going to talk about, we're going to circle back to coasters. We're going to go over to the Tomorrowland part of the park. And let's talk about Space Mountain. So Space Mountain is one of the OG roller coasters over at Magic Kingdom. It is a fully indoor coaster. There are actually 2 different tracks inside of this building, which I feel like a lot of people don't realize. But there are two different tracks that you can go on. Typically, the way they have it split is one of the tracks is for the standby and one of the tracks is for the lightning lanes. But occasionally they do it differently, just depends on the day. It is completely in the dark, completely in the dark. It does have some space and stars theming in the top of the dome that has a little bit of lighting that goes with it. But overall, it is basically completely in the dark. So again, if you've got a kiddo that doesn't love the dark, if you've got somebody that doesn't prefer being in the dark, you're going to have to make a decision. Being that this ride is one of the original coasters to this park, it definitely shows its age in a lot of ways. It's a little bit of a rougher ride. It's a little bit trickier to get in and out of the coaster cars and the seats. It also is a single file car. So if you've got a little that is like just tall enough, which Space Mountain is a 44-inch height requirement. If you've got a little that is like just tall enough, but maybe won't do well riding it without someone next to them, you may want to wait a little bit longer. When my youngest rode it for the first time, she was very adamant about the fact that my husband sat behind her so he could reach up and kind of put his hands on her shoulders to just give her that sense of like, right, I'm cool, we're good, I'm not gonna go anywhere. A lot of that's mental with kiddos of that age, but she ended up really loving it, and now she's gone on it several times after that. So again, keep in mind that it is completely in the dark. It is a little bit of a rougher coaster, partially because it's an older style coaster and partially because you can't really see where the coaster's going to go. So you don't know when it's going to turn, quickly one way or the other or go up and down really fast or things like that. So for that matter, I will say it's probably that and Barnstormer honestly are probably the roughest coasters at Magic Kingdom, just in the way that they kind of jerk you around side to side and up and down with that. Space Mountain is a really fun one during the holiday season. If you visit during Christmas, they do a whole Christmas overlay for it during the Christmas party. So during Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party, they have like Trans-Siberian Orchestra Christmas music and Christmas lights playing on it. We actually chose for that to be the first time that my daughter rode because it was more lit up on the inside and we thought she'd have a better time with that. And I'm really glad that we did that because I think that helped. Now, on the other end of things, during the Halloween party, they completely turn all of the lights off on Space Mountain. So it is completely pitch black, no stars, no moon, no anything up in the top of the dome, completely pitch black. So different, very different experience during the Halloween party. During Not So Scary is when it's completely pitch black. During Mickey's Very Merry is when you get the extra lights and the fun music. So both of those experiences completely feel different than the experience that you would get during a normal ride. The normal ride is somewhere in the middle. If you think about, pitch black and a little more scary versus light and more fun at Christmas time, the regular ride is somewhere in the middle with that. And again, that is a 44-inch height requirement for Space Mountain. The last coaster and the last thrill ride that we're going to talk about at Magic Kingdom is TRON Lightcycle Run. And this is one of the most popular attractions along with Cosmic Rewind across Walt Disney World parks. So TRON is going to be one of the longest waits that you have to account for if you're planning to do standby. It is motorcycle style seating. So we saw that also with Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom, but it is a motorcycle style seating. It is a very fast launch. And then from that launch that goes outside under the canopy that you can see when you are approaching the ride, the rest of the ride is indoors, completely inside, where you will enter the grid and join Team Blue, typically, to try to defeat the other teams. Sometimes you are on Team Orange if the canopy lights up orange when you go outside. It just depends. And the first launch is probably the most intense part because you launch immediately outside and around. The rest of the coaster is super smooth. Very, very fun ride. The biggest complaint about this one that I hear from most people is that it's just not quite long enough. We would want another like maybe 30 seconds on the ride to make it truly feel worth the wait because it is typically at least an hour. Even on really slow park days, you're going to wait that long if you choose to do standby. It is a 48-inch height requirement for TRON. So again, one of those higher ones like we saw at like Rock and Roller Coaster, just because it is a little bit more of an intense ride, and your legs and feet have to be long enough to make sure that you fit properly in the restraints, because the way that the restraints work is when you sit on the motorcycle, there's a plate that comes up behind your back, but then they also enclose your legs in because they don't want your legs to be free while you're going through the coaster, because you could get injured if that were to happen. So they need to make sure that you're tall enough to fit on that style of ride vehicle for the coaster. Something else to note about Tron, and something that I think is really a nod to the Imagineers and the developers of this ride, is that you don't have to be familiar with the Tron franchise, with the movies or anything, to be able to ride this attraction. They really do a nice job of the theming in like the little pre-show area, so that way you kind of know what it is that you're about to ride, which I think is really nice because I have never seen the Tron movies. They're on my list. I know I need to watch them at some point just as a Disney person, but I've never seen the movies, and I still love the ride and I understand the theming and it all makes sense to me. So kudos to the Imagineers for that for Tron. Okay, that brings us to the end of all of the thrill rides. Now, there may have been rides on this list that you're like, I don't think that's a thrill ride, or there may have been other rides that you're like, why isn't this on the list? This is based on what Disney considers thrill rides. So that's what we went with, and that's what we're going to go with continuing on, because we are going to talk about what it is that you can do if you are wanting to ride as many of these thrill rides as possible in a single day at Walt Disney World. So here is my suggestion. Now, really, truly, the best way to do all of these rides in one day is going to have to be to dip into your bank account and pay some to ride these rides. So, with paying, here's my suggestion. When you can pre-book your lightning lanes, you are going to purchase multi-pass at Hollywood Studios. We'll get to that in a minute. And then you are going to purchase the single passes for Guardians of the Galaxy and Tron. When you book your multi-pass, you are going to book things in like mid-afternoon. So like 2, 3, 4 o'clock, 1, 2, 3 o'clock, maybe somewhere in that range. And you are going to book Slinky Dog, you are going to book Tower of Terror, and you are going to book Smuggler's Run. Those are going to be the 3 that you book for that. Now, your time for Guardians of the Galaxy is going to need to be like 11 a.m. Your time for Tron is going to need to be like 8 p.m., somewhere in that range. Here's your course of action for the day. You're going to rope drop Animal Kingdom, and you're going to get there as early as you possibly can and get in line for the rides as early as you possibly can. You're going to start with Flight of Passage. You have to go there first, or you are not going to get on it without like a 2-hour wait. From there, I would go over to Expedition Everest and then go to Cali River Rapids. Cali River Rapids typically has a delayed opening, so it doesn't typically open until like 9 or 10 a.m., depending on the time of year. So look at that and be there and be done with the other 2 rides and ready to get on Cali River as soon as it opens. That will put you in a good place to then hop over to EPCOT. At EPCOT, you are going to do standby for Mission Space. You are going to do either the single rider line or standby for Test Track. Test Track has a really good single rider line. So and you don't miss any of the actual ride theming or anything, you just miss a little bit of the queue. Not the end of the world. So you would have to do a single rider line. Now, if you can't do a single rider line, you're just going to have to deal with the wait for that one. So Mission Space and Test Track standby, and then you're going to use your lightning lane for Guardians of the Galaxy, and that will take care of your EPCOT. So you should be pretty close to being done. If you are quick at Animal Kingdom, you get to EPCOT on time, get through those 3 rides, you should be able to grab your lunch from EPCOT and then hop over to Hollywood Studios. At Hollywood Studios, you're going to then use your lightning lane selections that you chose for Slinky Dog, Tower of Terror, and Smuggler's Run in whatever order it makes sense based on what you were able to book and modify. You can try to get a time for Rock and Roller Coaster on your lightning lanes. It may or may not work out. If it doesn't, you're either going to have to cross your fingers that the single rider line is not very long, or wait in the standby queue for that. And then you can do the single rider for Rise of the Resistance. Now, unfortunately, again, if you can't do single rider for those, you're just going to have to wait in line for those, which could be an hour or so for both of those attractions, depending on the day. That then will take you to Magic Kingdom. Now, after you have used your lightning lanes in Hollywood Studios, you can use lightning lanes at Magic Kingdom next. So I would try to book something for Big Thunder Mountain. I would try to book something for Space Mountain. I would try to book something for Tiana's. Those would be the 3 that I would look at. You may or may not need them if you're willing to stay late and not stop what you're doing to stand and watch the fireworks. You may be able to get on standby. You may have to try to get a lightning lane. It just really depends on the day. You can definitely do standby for Barnstormer. That one usually isn't more than a 30-minute wait. And then Tiana's and Space are kind of your wild card with that. Lightning Lane for Big Thunder is the best way to go just because it is fairly new still. But the line for that during fireworks is usually 45 or less. It just, again, depends on the day. You're going to use your single pass for TRON whenever you booked it. And then the last ride that leaves you with is Seven Dwarfs. So Seven Dwarfs is going to be another tricky one to try to get on. You're either going to need to do it during the fireworks or at the very end of the night to catch it at a shorter wait. You're going to have to keep an eye on your app and just kind of cross your fingers and hope. Typically during fireworks, the posted time is longer than the actual wait. If your queue is almost inside the mine, go ahead and get in line because it won't be too long as far as that goes. And that will get you through everything that we talked about. Now, if you don't want to pay and you don't care about waiting in line, you're not going to be able to get all of this done in one day without paying for lightning lanes, which I hate. I absolutely hate that. I hate that you have to buy these passes at Disney to be able to get through all of these attractions that you want to get through. So you're going to want to put 2 parks together on each day. It's probably going to take you 2 days to get through everything. I would put together Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom, starting in Animal Kingdom, then hopping to Magic Kingdom. And then I would put Hollywood Studios with EPCOT if it were me. And you're just going to have to look at the wait times, get through as many things as you can early in your first park to get to your second park as early as you can to give yourself the most time to get through everything else. But that would be my suggestion on if you want to truly do everything on this thrill ride list that we talked about without paying for any lightning lanes. Probably going to take you at least 2 days. So I hope that all of that information has been helpful. If you want more help planning your perfect thrill day at Disney World, please reach out. You can reach me at momstreetusa@gmail.com, or you can send me a DM on any of our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. So reach out on whatever platform you prefer. You can also find me and chat with me over on Patreon at Mom Street USA over there as well. Coming up next for Mom Street USA, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we are going to be doing a complete opposite from what we talked about today. So today was all about thrill rides. Next week, we are going to talk about dark rides and slow moving rides and rides that are best for like littles that you can do and how to make the most of your day if that is what you are wanting to do at the Disney parks. So that is what is coming next. But thank you all so much for being here for this episode of Mom Street USA. I truly appreciate you guys hanging out here and tuning in for every episode. And I will see you on the next episode of Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.